Emma thought she had escaped Derek's rage years ago, but when she saw the news that he had brutally killed a mother, her worst fears came rushing back. What she survived was only the beginning of his deadly obsession. Emma had always considered herself careful, but after the night Derek attacked her, caution became an obsession. She remembered the way his face twisted with anger, the suddenness of his assault, and the fear that had gripped her body as she scrambled to escape. The bruises on her arms and the scratches on her legs were only physical reminders. The mental scars ran far deeper. The police had listened politely, taken notes, and then told her that without stronger evidence, there was little they could do. Derek walked free, a fact that gnawed at her every day afterward. She had tried to convince herself that leaving town, changing her number, and avoiding anything familiar would erase the terror he had instilled in her. But deep down, she knew fear wasn't something that could be so easily buried. Years passed, and Emma attempted to rebuild a life that had once felt shattered. She moved into a small apartment across the state, took a stable job, and surrounded herself with supportive friends. Yet even in her new life, she often found herself glancing over her shoulder, imagining shadows that weren't there. Every sudden knock at the door or unexpected noise made her heart race. The trauma she had survived had left her vigilant, wary of the world, and distrustful of anyone who seemed too intense, too controlling. Emma told herself it was normal to be cautious, a way to survive, and it kept her going. Still, she could never have anticipated that her past would reach across years and miles to intrude once again. It started on an ordinary morning. Emma had woken early, made a cup of coffee, and settled in front of her laptop to scroll through the day's news. Headlines appeared as they always did, a mix of politics, crime, and human interest stories. One article, however, made her stomach turn instantly. A mother had been found dead in her home, and the suspect was none other than Derek. At first, she stared at the screen in disbelief, convinced her eyes were playing tricks on her. Derek was supposed to be a part of her past, a danger she had escaped. Yet here he was, years later, connected to a new act of violence, far more sinister than anything she had endured. Her heart raced uncontrollably and a cold sweat broke out across her forehead. The fear that had once felt distant was now immediate, visceral, and suffocating. As Emma read further, details of the murder emerged, each sentence tightening a knot of terror in her chest. The victim, Claire, had been attacked in her home. Her life ended in a way that was brutal and calculated. Police reports suggested Derek had planned the attack, breaking in while Claire was home alone and fleeing before authorities arrived. The familiarity of Derek's methods, the calculated nature of the assault, brought back vivid memories of the night he had cornered Emma. She could see his movements, his quiet patience, and the sudden eruption of violence that left her running for her life. The realization was overwhelming. The man she had survived had not changed. He had only escalated. And now, someone else had paid the ultimate price. For hours, Emma sat frozen in her apartment, unable to move or think clearly. Images of the crime scene merged with memories of her own trauma, forming a disturbing picture she could not shake. The past and the present collided, and she realized that escaping Derek had not been enough. The danger he represented had not vanished with her distance. It had only grown, claiming another innocent life. Emma understood with a sinking certainty that the nightmare she had thought ended had only transformed, leaving her with the haunting knowledge that some dangers could follow you across years and borders, unrelenting and unstoppable. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the details of the crime. Every description in the news report, every photograph of the scene seemed to echo memories she had long tried to bury. Claire had been found in her living room, signs of a struggle evident everywhere, overturned furniture, broken glass, and traces of blood smeared across the walls. The violence of the attack was shocking, but what disturbed Emma the most was the calculated precision of it. The way Derek had apparently studied Claire's routine, knowing exactly when she would be home alone, reminded her of the obsession he had shown toward her during their relationship. It was the same methodical, chilling pattern, only now it had escalated into something deadly. Emma's stomach twisted with fear and guilt. She felt powerless knowing she had survived his wrath while someone else had not. She spent hours online digging into what she could find about Derek's life after their breakup. She discovered he had moved frequently, drifting from town to town, never staying in one place long enough to form lasting connections. It was a pattern that seemed harmless on the surface, but in hindsight, Emma recognized it as a way to avoid consequences, to stay under the radar after minor incidents that had gone unreported. In some forums, she found vague mentions of women who had felt threatened by a man matching his description, though the stories lacked concrete evidence. Each connection she uncovered sent a chill down her spine, a creeping sense that this tragedy could have been predicted if anyone had paid attention. Emma tried to make sense of why Derek had targeted Claire. From what she could piece together, he had studied her social media, tracked her movements, and waited for weeks before making his move. The idea that he could plan something so cold-blooded was terrifying. Memories of her own experience with him replayed vividly, the subtle intimidation, the sudden outbursts of violence, the way he seemed to anticipate her reactions. Emma realized with growing horror that what she had survived was only a precursor to what he was capable of. Claire had been unlucky enough to encounter his rage at a time when it had escalated beyond what anyone could have predicted. The sense of guilt weighed heavily on Emma. She kept asking herself if she could have done something to prevent this. Could she have warned Claire somehow? Could she have alerted the authorities more effectively given what she knew about Derek? These questions haunted her, though she knew logically that she could not have foreseen every twist of fate. Still, the thought that her own history with Derek might have provided a warning that went unheeded was almost unbearable. As the days passed, Emma watched the investigation unfold through news updates. Detectives were piecing together a timeline, connecting Derek to the crime through evidence she could barely comprehend. Digital footprints, surveillance videos, and eyewitness accounts. Emma realized the full scope of what she had survived and what Claire had not. She felt a combination of dread and grim relief, knowing that Derek's patterns were finally being recognized, but also acutely aware of the human cost of his actions. The past had collided with the present, and the reality was impossible to ignore. The man who had terrorized her once had become a deadly threat, leaving a trail of fear and tragedy in his wake. Emma's mind became consumed with uncovering every detail she could about Derek's life after their breakup. The more she learned, the more chilling the picture became. She discovered that he had drifted from town to town, rarely holding a job for more than a few months, leaving behind vague rumors and whispers of troubling behavior. In some places, neighbors remembered strange incidents, women disappearing for a few hours, doors left unlocked, or odd phone calls late at night. No one had connected these moments to him before, but now, looking back, Emma could see a pattern emerging. Derek's life was a trail of small disturbances that, when pieced together, hinted at something much darker. She began constructing a timeline in her mind. Each town he lived in, every change of address, seemed to correspond with incidents that might have gone unnoticed or underreported. There were gaps where the records were thin, where no one knew what he was doing, and those gaps made Emma's stomach churn. They represented time when he could have been planning, observing, and waiting for the right moment to strike again. She realized that his violent tendencies had never disappeared. They had only been contained by circumstance, or perhaps by chance. Derek's behavior, once a terrifying mystery to her, now looked like a deliberate escalation, each act more calculated and dangerous than the last. Emma's investigation became obsessive. She searched social media profiles, public records, and news archives, looking for any clue of women who had been threatened or harmed. She found fragments, reports of harassment, anonymous complaints, and strange social media interactions that now seemed ominous. One post, long ignored, described a woman feeling unsafe after noticing a man watching her apartment building. Another news brief mentioned an attempted break-in that never made it past police notes. Emma felt a mixture of horror and dread. Each piece of information confirmed what she already feared. Derek had been plotting, observing, and escalating over the years, and Claire had tragically become his next target. The more Emma discovered, the more she understood the method behind Derek's madness. He had studied Claire, learned her routines, and waited for weeks before making his move. This deliberate patience mirrored what she had once endured, only now magnified in severity and consequence. Emma's own survival felt both fortunate and damning. She had been spared, yet someone else had not. She was haunted by the thought that she could have provided earlier warnings, that her knowledge of Derek's patterns might have prevented a tragedy. The realization was suffocating. The past she had hoped to leave behind had returned to claim another life. Emma felt a grim resolve forming inside her. She could not undo what had happened to Claire, but she could contribute to stopping Derek before he hurt anyone else. She contacted the authorities, providing them with her own experiences and insights into his behavior. Each detail she shared became a vital piece of the investigation, helping detectives understand Derek's psychology and anticipate his moves. Emma's research became a bridge between the past and present, connecting her survival to the pursuit of justice. She realized that uncovering the full scope of Derek A.'s life was not just a way to process her fear. It was a responsibility to ensure that no one else would fall victim to the same pattern of obsession and violence. The investigation into Derek's crimes intensified as detectives began connecting the dots from Emma's statements, surveillance footage, and digital evidence. Emma watched the news obsessively, heart pounding each time new details emerged. The authorities had reconstructed a chilling timeline. Derek had stalked Claire for weeks, memorizing her schedule, watching when she left for work, and noting when she was home alone. The meticulous planning horrified Emma because it mirrored the obsessive behaviors she had experienced firsthand. The same calculated patience, the same quiet menace, now revealed itself as the underlying force behind the murder. Detectives had also uncovered surveillance footage from nearby stores and traffic cameras. Each clip showed Derek in the vicinity of Claire's home on multiple occasions, often lingering just out of sight, as if testing the waters for his crime. They traced his digital activity as well, finding messages, social media interactions, and online searches that mapped his obsession. For Emma, seeing the evidence assembled was both terrifying and validating. She realized the world was finally seeing Derek the way she had always known him, a man capable of planning violence with cold precision. As the investigation deepened, Emma received a call from the authorities asking her to provide a detailed account of her experience with Derek. Recounting the past was agonizing. She had to relive the fear, the physical assault, and the psychological torment, but she understood the importance of her testimony. Every detail she remembered, the subtle intimidation, the unpredictable bursts of anger, the way he manipulated situations to isolate her, offered detectives crucial insight into his patterns. Emma's perspective became invaluable, helping law enforcement anticipate Derek's behavior and understand the calculated methods behind Claire's murder. Meanwhile, the community reacted with shock and fear. People who had interacted with Derek in the past began to share their own experiences, revealing a string of unsettling incidents that had gone unreported. Witnesses came forward, recounting odd encounters, near misses, and instances of harassment. It became clear that Derek had operated under the radar for years, carefully avoiding situations that might lead to legal consequences while simultaneously escalating his violent tendencies. Emma felt a mix of anger and dread as she realized how close he had come to harming more people before finally being caught. A breakthrough came when authorities discovered that Derek had planned to flee the country. Airport security detained him just in time, preventing another potential tragedy. During questioning, his calm, detached demeanor sent shivers through the detectives. He spoke in measured tones, showing no remorse, only cold calculation. Emma could hardly believe the man she had once known, the man who had terrorized her years ago, could display such chilling composure in the face of evidence. His capture marked a turning point in the investigation, but it also confirmed the full extent of his dangerousness. Derek was no longer just a memory from Emma's past. He was a tangible threat, neutralized only by careful police work and, in part, her own courage to speak out. As the case moved toward trial, Emma realized that justice would not erase the trauma she and Claire had endured, but it could provide a measure of closure. The police had unraveled the intricate web of Derek's life, exposing the darkness he had hidden behind charm and manipulation. Emma's contributions, her willingness to face fear once again, had helped bring him to account. The nightmare she had thought was behind her had transformed into a powerful force for justice, ensuring that Derek would no longer have the opportunity to hurt anyone else. The courtroom was tense from the very first day of Derek's trial. Emma sat among the spectators, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, bracing herself for the images and testimonies that would soon unfold. Each day brought new revelations about the planning, obsession, and cold precision of Derek's crimes. Witnesses recounted moments that, at the time, had seemed insignificant, but now revealed a pattern of escalating violence and manipulation. Emma listened, sometimes holding back tears, realizing that the man who had terrorized her years ago had left a trail of fear and destruction that extended far beyond what she had known. Evidence presented in court was both damning and horrifying. Surveillance footage, digital records, and eyewitness accounts painted a clear picture of Derek's premeditated actions. Detectives described the meticulous way he had observed Claire, waited for the perfect moment, and executed his attack with precision. Every detail aligned with what Emma remembered from her own experiences: the patience, the subtle intimidation, and the sudden eruption of violence. It was as if the courtroom itself had become a place where the full truth of Derek's nature was finally being acknowledged. Emma felt a strange mixture of relief and dread, knowing that the man responsible for her own terror was finally facing consequences, yet disturbed by the magnitude of what he had done to Claire. Throughout the trial, Emma's own testimony proved crucial. She recounted the night Derek had attacked her, the warning signs she had tried to ignore, and the patterns of his behavior that had foreshadowed greater violence. Speaking about those moments was agonizing. Reliving the fear, the sense of helplessness, and the physical pain tested her strength. Yet she knew that her voice could help protect others, and it became a source of empowerment. Every word she shared helped the jury understand Derek's methods, motivations, and the danger he posed. Emma's story bridged the gap between past and present, showing that what had happened to Claire was part of a larger, terrifying pattern. As the trial progressed, the courtroom became a stage for shocking revelations. Investigators described Derek's attempts to hide evidence, his meticulous planning to evade capture, and his lack of remorse. Experts on criminal behavior explained how individuals like Derek escalate over time, moving from minor assaults to life-threatening violence. Emma listened closely, understanding more deeply the danger she had narrowly escaped years ago. The realization fueled her determination to ensure that her experience and Claire's tragic death would not be in vain. When the verdict was finally read, the relief was overwhelming. Derek was convicted of murder and multiple prior assaults, his future permanently sealed behind prison walls. Emma felt a mixture of closure and lingering sorrow. Justice had been served, but it could not erase the pain, the trauma, or the lives that had been forever altered by Derek's actions. In the weeks following the trial, Emma turned her focus to advocacy, sharing her story publicly to raise awareness of warning signs, stalking behaviors, and escalating violence. She became determined to help other survivors recognize danger before it could escalate, transforming her own trauma into a force for protection and prevention. Emma's journey had been harrowing, but it had also become a testament to resilience. She had faced the darkest parts of her past, survived, and used her experience to ensure that others might avoid similar fates. The story of Derek's violence, though tragic, highlighted the importance of vigilance, courage, and speaking out. Emma had learned that while some horrors cannot be undone, survivors can turn fear into action, and in doing so, honor the lives of those lost while protecting those yet to be threatened. Her past had shaped her, but it no longer controlled her. She had reclaimed her life and, in the process, found a purpose that would guide her forward.